So I'm going to see how well this one goes. A couple of days ago, I woke up and I had kind of like this drainage going on in the back of my throat, and then I had some sinus congestion starting. And as of this, Thursday, Fridays are normally my day off, my working days off. Believe it or not, I work Saturday through Wednesday, and when I woke up on Thursday morning, there was really a bad soreness here, and I was kind of hoping that it's just the drainage clearing on out with the changes in the season and all that stuff that happens this time of year. But keeping my fingers crossed that it doesn't turn into a full-blown cold or something worse. Don't think it's COVID again. I remember for one thing, I haven't had a fever, and I haven't really had that weird out of the world kind of feeling that I had. Like when I had COVID, I mean, I look back on that, the symptoms of the COVID thing going on with my, the congestion and flu-like symptoms were bad enough, but it had some kind of effect on me mentally. I don't know how to explain it, except I was operating like a guy that was under the influence of a really heavy narcotic or something like that. I wasn't making a lot of sense in my communication, and I wasn't able to process information from the television or the computer. Of course, at the time that I had COVID, we were all in lockdown anyway, pretty much nationwide, so I didn't have to worry about actually going out and going anywhere, because I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to drive a car with nothing else. I was gone. So I'm hoping that's not going to happen this go around. But it occurred to me that there was one topic that I used to hear read in those meetings all the time that just used to fill me full of all kinds of irritating rage when I would hear it done. That I never really was able to analyze what it was about that whole entire thing that used to piss me off so badly. It was just I would hear it read, and then I would think to myself, oh, this is such a crock of shit, and that was about as far as I could get with it. I didn't, to borrow a postmodernist term, I never really deconstructed it as to why it was irritating me so bad. It's in their silly little book, big book they call it, but it was read with such an arrogant vibe about it, the way everybody would puff up over it, that I just felt that, I can't really collect my thoughts on anything this week outside of the other topics I wanted to cover, so I thought I'd maybe jump in and do this one. But it's in their book, and it's been so long since I looked at this, but it's on page 68, and it's right before they go into their weird little bizarre moral rant that's against sex and sexual behavior. It's funny, this is coming from the people who have no problem taking advantage of newcomers, who have no problem taking advantage of vulnerable people. But sex is a very dirty, nasty thing that we shouldn't, allow or encourage. We shouldn't have any sexuality in our society because, God doesn't want that, even though they're spiritual and not religious. But it's funny that they get on this moral high horse when the rooms are full of all kinds of disgusting, vile human beings that do all kinds of nasty things to vulnerable people, not limited to stealing from people, not limited to buying drugs from people and getting them high so they can do whatever they like to them. And the list goes on. It's really rich that these people who screech about morality the most are usually the most vile, is the best word I could use to describe them. But this one used to really irritate me a lot when I'd see people read it, because it was always read in this smug tone. But it's in this part on page 68 where it says, "We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it's the way of strength," because they said so, I guess. "The verdict of the ages is in that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. If the way you assholes behave in those meetings is God demonstrating what he can do, I'd say he needs a completely restructuring of his plans and needs to hire some new PR management, because you guys suck at it. But anyway, we ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. And once we commence to outgrow fear," this is written in such childish terms that I can't believe I ever put any kind of seriousness into it. I mean, there's another line up here before I start tearing it apart, but it says, "We are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role he assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us, and humbly rely on him. Does he enable us to match calamity with serenity?" This is all such blabber. I mean, I can't believe I would ever take these sentences and even absorb them with any kind of degree of seriousness whatsoever. I mean, it's just so poorly grammatically written. It sounds like something some religious fanatic at 9 years old would write in a coloring book or something like that. I mean, if he was taking notes for his Sunday school class or something. I mean, it's so immature, and it's just so full of bold assertions that have no basis in fact whatsoever that it bears being destroyed and taken apart. For one thing, we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. Nobody's asking you to. You know, I can't recall a time in my life or a time that I've ever seen anyone go around telling people, you know what, you need to apologize because you depend on your Creator. You need to apologize because you're a religious person. I've never actually ever encountered anything like that before. Most of the time, it's the religious fanatics like these assholes in AA that rub that shit in your face, and then they act like they're being persecuted when you tell them, nah, you're full of shit. I don't have to listen to this, and I don't have to tolerate it. I mean, we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. I could give a flying fuck what you depend on. I could give a flying fuck if you get up every morning and you roll around in mud in your yard and scream at the sky and say, I'm dependent on my Creator. That's not what bothers me. What bothers me is you force this fundamental religious horse shit via the court system a lot of the times down people's throats and tell them it's the only way to stop drinking, and it's the only way that you're going to ever hope to get any better, and it's an attempt at erasing your individuality in favor of hive mind like the Star Trek Borg, or like a complete uniformity of everybody just falling in line and complying with some obedient authoritarian dictatorship. But you're going to take the high road here and say you don't apologize for depending on your Creator. What you need to really say, if you want to reword that line, is I don't ever apologize for being a bullying asshole that says a whole lot of shit in meetings that doesn't have any ring of truth to it, other than the fact that I like to hear myself talk, and and I'm a hero for doing it because I don't apologize for this. You're not being persecuted because you're a fucking phony religious whack job pushing your 12-step cult religion. Okay, you're being pushed back against because your way doesn't work. It kills people, it harms people, it makes relapses worse, and there are people like me out here who's not going to stand for that, as well as a lot of other people. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Well, first of all, nobody has said spirituality is the way of weakness. For one thing, you don't get to determine what spirituality is. It kills me how he writes that sentence, spirituality the way of weakness, like he owns spirituality. Like Bill W. is the sole corner market authority and final say-so on what spirituality is. But nobody's laughing at you for your spirituality. They think you're fucking crazy. They think you're a fucking phony and a fucking con artist and a whack job. They're not laughing at you because they're saying you're in the way of weakness. They're laughing at you or pushing back at you because you're a smug, sanctimonious hypocrite. That's what they're laughing at. But I just think it's funny, there again, you want to be persecuted so bad, these AA gurus and old-timers, let people laugh at me and think I'm weak. I don't apologize. I depend on my Creator. Nobody's asking you to apologize on behalf of your fucking Creator. They're not telling you you're weak. They're telling you that you don't have a right to force your phony religion on us. That's what they're telling you. Paradoxically, it's the way of strength. Paradoxically, it's the way of strength. A paradox, as I've explained in these videos before, is a paradox is when two statements don't seem true until they're analyzed a little bit closer. Like I've used this example in other videos before. It's a paradox if I say I wasted my entire youth because I was young. That doesn't sound like it makes sense. It sounds like a complete contradiction. But when you examine it closely, it's not a contradiction at all. I wasted my younger years because I was young and naive and foolish and couldn't see the forest for the trees, for lack of a better term here. I wasted my youth because of my immaturity. But it's not because there's a weird spiritual paradox conundrum that's just beyond all explanation. And by the way, just because you said it's the way of strength doesn't make it so. But let me elaborate on that a little further. What's strong about AA? I mean, most of the AA old-timers I saw in those meetings, they didn't have jobs. They didn't have really any kind of steady what would be the word I'm looking for to describe that? They didn't seem to have any kind of actual firmly grounded framework that they were living by. They seemed to always be bumming off one person and another. They seem to always be trying to get phony disability checks for disabilities they didn't have. I'm not knocking people who have disability and need help from the government. I'm not knocking those people. I'm knocking people that I know that made a career out of going to AA meetings and drink coffee and sell drugs to newcomers and then would claim they were disabled when what is the song by Creedence Clearwater Revival, when the tax man comes knocking at the door, I'm not talking about someone who's injured and can't work. I think you understand the personality I'm describing there. AA old-timers that I know of weren't strong at all outside of when they were sitting in meetings and shitting on everybody else for having less time than they. Nobody in the real world gives a flying fuck how long you've been without a drink. If I went to a job interview tomorrow, another job interview, currently happy with my setup as it is now, and they said, tell us a little bit about yourself, like they do in those horrible interviews. I hate interviews, but the first thing I wouldn't say is, well, I don't apologize for depending on my creator. I'm strong for that. I've been 25 years without a drink right now. We'll call you, is probably what their answer would be. But I like it how he just writes that sentence like it actually cannot be argued with or disagreed with. It's not the way of weakness, it's the way of strength. Like, if you disagree with that in any way, shape, form, or fashion, you're somehow not sober enough for the AA program. You're in doubt and self-will and denial and all these other negative attributes that they assign to you simply because you say, well, that sentence doesn't jive with me and I don't agree with it. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. The verdict of the ages from whom? The verdict of the ages by whom? By the people that were getting burned at the stake for being religious heretics? By the people that were being tortured over the Inquisition? By the people who, have been stoned to death in Afghanistan for adultery? The verdict of the ages from the women who are taking off those hijabs in Iran right now and are fighting back the morality police in the streets? The verdict of the ages is that the guys with faith had the courage. The verdict of the ages depending on who exactly. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to say. You're talking about current events. This is the 1930s. Okay, we'll go back to the 1930s and go back from history from there. What verdict of the ages are you talking about? You're talking about what the church did with Galileo? You're talking about what the church did with Copernicus? You're talking about the Inquisitions? You're talking about the Holy Wars? You're talking about the Crusades? What are you talking about, the real verdict of the ages? The Oxford group that Bill Wilson was a big part of supported Hitler, and they said that they couldn't wait for a worldwide dictatorship of men under God control. That doesn't sound like faith and courage to me. That sounds like a bunch of authoritarian, draconian assholes that want to force their views on everybody else and force everybody to live the way they want them to live. The verdict of the ages. What verdict of the ages? This is just grandstanding. There's no factual basis to any of that. That's just grandstanding. All men of faith have courage. All men of faith have courage. What do you define as a man of faith? Because I don't define a man of faith as somebody like these Catholic priests that were molesting little boys, or the Southern Baptist Convention that covered up sex abuse scandals, or the people in the Texas prison system that were being abused by the prison chaplains. I don't call those guys men of faith. But what are you talking about with all men of faith have courage? What men? Can you name me a few, or are you just talking about yourself and your 12-step brainwashed cult followers, which don't have any courage at all, by the way, outside of those meetings and their little group hierarchies that they sit on, where they shit on everybody and bully everybody? They're not courageous people. They're utter cowards in the face of real-world confrontation. Oh, they can tell you about how they had 1 million assault charges for beating up people when they were drunks and all that. I've never seen one of them that was any kind of badass outside of when they were talking in those meetings. But again, this statement's meaningless anyway. All men of faith have courage. Have courage to do what? To go around saying, I don't apologize for my creator? Is that the courage? Let people laugh at me if they think I'm weak. I know I'm strong. Is that the courage you're talking about? What courage? What men of faith? You got to be more specific here if you want to toss out shit like this. They trust their God. Okay, I guess. They trust their God. You're saying that like that's some major, thing. What are you talking about exactly here? You know, there was the situation, I can't remember the priest's name, that was killed in South America in front of his congregation. I would say that maybe he had probably some courage when he knew he was going to die. There was the situation of the Buddhists who set themselves on fire. There was a situation of those nuns who were being raped in South America that prayed for the men doing it to them before they were killed. I mean, I could kind of argue that people of those religious type natures had courage in the face of what was happening to them. But surely to God, you fucking Quackaholics and you AA people sitting in rooms sucking on your cigarettes and drinking your coffee and talking about what kind of courage you got. You don't think you're in their league, do you? And I might add that it's not just religious people who have displayed that kind of courage before. Nor am I saying that always that courage is correct. I mean, you look at those, I was going to name a certain political organization. It was in Belfast. They literally starved themselves to death to prove a point. I mean, you can't call those people cowardly. Would you call those people rational? The people who flew the planes into the World Trade Center, I wouldn't call them cowards, but I don't know if I would call that courage in a noble kind of way, if you know what I'm saying. All men have faith, all men of faith have courage. They trust their God. Well, like I said, I'm pretty sure that some of the more insidious things that have happened in the name of God, the bloodshed, the murders, the crucifixions, the burnings at the stake, and several other things were done by cowards who were hiding behind their religion, using it as a tool for repression on other people. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by just saying they trust their God, like this is some big deal. We never apologize for God. Okay, you've already said you don't apologize for depending on your Creator. Now you got to really ram it home to me with saying the same thing all over again. Nobody's asking you to apologize for being a fucking delusional cult member. What we're asking you to do is understand that addiction is a multifaceted, complex problem that is not supposed to be treated by cult fucking religion that's almost 90 years old now. We're telling you to get out of the way of progress of society and science and what really needs to be done to do something about people with drinking problems. We're tired of you feeding your fucking ego by saying you trust God when you only use it as a weapon to browbeat people who are vulnerable and ill and trying to seek help for their addictions. Sick or not with a sinus infection, the big book can kind of make me feel a little bit more energetic and alive when I'm tearing it apart. Maybe I need to do more of these, Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what we can do. I'm rereading it again. Demonstrate through you what you can do. What is it you can do exactly? You don't drink. You go to meetings and drink coffee. You smoke cigarettes. You prey on newcomer girls. You prey on newcomer guys. You steal from people. You like to hear the sound of your own voice when you're talking in meetings about what a wonderful spiritual person you are when you engage in all kinds of shitty activity. How exactly is God demonstrating any power through you? Like I said, again, if this is God demonstrating power by you sitting there treating people like shit because you've got 20 some odd years in the program, then he needs to get a new management team. He needs to get new PR people. He needs to get something better than the religious whack jobs and the religious fundamentalists and the other people in this world that have proven that they're very, very, very far from any kind of good deeds of any type whatsoever. So let me go, let's see. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. Well, you can ask kind of stuff like that all day long, and it may not ever happen. But by the by, that's not really true either, because you wouldn't sit in meetings for the rest of your life talking about how afraid you are, how you're ruled by fear, how you're selfish and self-centered, you can never get any better, and that you'll never get any better unless you sit in these rooms for the rest of your life. What courage is that? Or what overcoming of fear is that? That's not an accomplishment. That's just you passing off all the failures that you've ever made from all the bad choices you've made onto an imaginary disease and saying, I'm a real man of faith with courage sitting in here battling it, when you're not doing a goddamn thing. You're just prescribing outdated cult religion on people. That's all you're doing. At once we commenced to outgrow fear. At once we commenced to outgrow fear. Well, I never saw it happen. Somebody posted in an online group something I thought I would throw out here, that AA people often use a made-up definition of insanity. Albert Einstein said, which he did not say, by the way. You can look it up on the internet. It was not Albert Einstein who said that. But they'll say, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Yet if you sit in meetings for 25 years saying the same shit, regurgitating the same nonsense, doing the same kind of foul activities that you're doing, you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. When I used to see people pick up a 30-year medallion and say, whoa, you know, even now, after 30 years, I'm still just a drink away, then you haven't outgrown anything. You're still a fucking newcomer. You're no different than you were when you first walked in the door. And that's not progress. You know, they'll say it's progress, not perfection. That's not progress at all. Even though they don't seriously believe that. You know, I got to do that topic in the near future. They don't really believe that, because why do people with 20 and 25 years, 30 years, 10 years, all the people that have time in double digits, why do they always act so arrogant towards the people who don't? Why do they treat relapses like shit? Why do they do that if they really think it's a disease and they're no better than anybody else and they think they're just one drink away? Why are they on an arrogant high horse about the people with less time than them? They don't believe it's a disease. They just love the fact that they've got a cult religion to justify their ability to act like they're superior to everybody else and treat everybody else like garbage. That's all they're doing. They don't believe half this shit themselves. They just know that when they say it in meetings, everybody loves it. But anyway, I won't read any further, because the next line is that putrid bit about sex. And of course, I used to fucking hate it when they'd read that topic in meetings too, because when someone would say now about sex, everybody would act like they were 12 years old, hearing the word dick for the first time, like some Beavis and Butthead skit or something like that, and they would turn the whole meeting into a bunch of 10-year-olds trying to talk nasty, you know, because they were just learning swear words and just learning what the word sex means. There's nothing freaky, weird, or anything wrong with sex. I mean, the only thing that I see wrong with sex is a bunch of religious fanatics who are so insecure about their own fucking virility that they have to go around forcing their morals on everyone else. But anyway, that's just 21 minutes. I certainly did not need to talk this long. Had no idea I was going to have the energy to go on this long. You know, it's nonsense. I don't know if you ever heard this topic read in your meetings. It was a popular one at all the meetings I went to in all the states I went to. Chime in on the comments. Let me know about the hypocrisy, or let me know about this topic and why you think it's absolute bullshit as well. Until next time.